So we're going to pivot towards one of my favorite topics, humor. I know we're supposed to be talking about entrepreneurship, but I think it's important as I introduce this next speaker to talk about this topic for just a second. You can read about our next speaker, David Hornik, in the guide. There's lots and lots of verbiage about all the wonderful things he's done besides just his professional career, but also his accomplishments in the community. But more importantly to me and my family, David represents the lighter side of dealing with dyslexia. You'll see that in just a second. We have a saying in our house, comedy is risky. And the reason it's risky is because sometimes you dance along that fine line of something that's funny and laughing at yourself versus something that wants to make you cry. And those of us who deal with family issues around dyslexia know probably exactly what I'm talking about. David and I met the first time at an IE conference many, many years ago, and he won me over with his irreverent, and I'll say it, cheeky view of the challenges of dyslexia. David's sense of humor reminds us that maybe we should try and find the good things in this struggle. I think that's an important part of it. Laugh a little, right? Don't worry, it's going to work out, right? And for that, I'm very grateful to call David my friend. I'll also say if there ever was a late night talk show to be hosted by a venture capitalist, David Hornik would be the guy. Please give a nice big round of applause for David Hornik.
I certainly hope so. On the other hand, the other contenders are pretty lame, so it's not much of a... It is... I will say this. The very best thing you can say of me is that I'm funny, but as an introduction to then speaking, it's a catastrophic. It's like, no, that guy is not funny. He's not, he's brought no humor to this topic. He's just bored us. So thank you for that. That's very lovely. I also realized this morning that I had picked the wrong day to stop drinking Diet Coke. That is catastrophic. But, it turns out that as of today, I'm off of Diet Coke, which means this talk is brought to you by La Croix or whatever, which should be decidedly less funny. So that's not on me either. I actually was hosting this event. I was hosting TEDx Stanford. Helped create the event. We did it for a bunch of years. And I was hosting TEDx Stanford one year. And the speaker was the leading expert in personalized medicine. He was the guy who did genetic testing, and then he'd build drugs just for you. And so, my introduction, I said, I was talking with this particular doctor. I was so excited to meet him because I wanted to know, is there a drug for a manic dyslexic Jew about 5'4"? I'm just curious if that drug exists. And then I said to him, oh, wait a second, never mind, it does exist. It's called Diet Coke, so we come full circle. I will never get to dyslexia. I will just consider this, all right, fine, dyslexia. The topic of this talk is traits of a successful entrepreneur with dyslexia, which, by the way, could be entitled Traits of a Successful Entrepreneur. Because it turns out that those things are indistinguishable at the end of the day. As I was thinking about this, and I've worked in the venture business for almost 20 years. I was an attorney before that. That was dumb. But I was. In fact, my law school roommate's wife, Lisa, is back there, hello. And he was the quintessential not me. First of all, he was one of the most brilliant humans you've ever met. Phi Beta Kappa, Tau Beta Pi, the most buttoned down human, tall, beautiful, fuck him. And he was, and if we had the exact same assignment for our first year at Harvard Law School, the world's stupidest thing for any dyslexic to do, Steve would finish up and be like, hey, see you. This is like on Thursday night. We're going to go drink with my buddies. And I'd be done about Sunday. And That's just how it went. But it worked out. It's all fine. I got out. Steve got out. We all got out of the law. But as I was thinking about this question of entrepreneurship and what are the traits, I realized that oftentimes people are dramatically confused about smart people, right? And I've been hearing this all my life, you've been hearing this all your life, which is smart people are readers. That's what smart people do. If you want to learn about entrepreneurship, you read. You read and you read and you read, and then you get recommendations on what to read. I wrote the very first blog on venture capital, so you had to read what I wrote. If you wanted to learn about if you want to learn how to be an entrepreneur, read, and you read, and some more, and you read. And then, what's really infuriating to me, and I imagine many of you have had this experience, if you go to a smart person event, I go to lots of smart person conferences. Smart person conferences, you sit down with other smart people and they talk about smart things. They share smartness with each other, theoretically, in an effort to be smarter. And one of the very favorite things that smart people like to do is recommend books they've read. There's no better signaling mechanism for the smart than to say, like, have you read blah, de blah, de blah by so-and-so? It was an incisive romp through, sociological takes on, team building or whatever. So I go to lots of these things, and I sit there half feeling terrible, because guess what? How many of those I've read? 0. And half thinking, you are morons. This is not the answer. This is not how great people learn. This is certainly not how dyslexics learn. This is not what we are. And this is not what entrepreneurship is about. I was just on the phone with a friend of mine. Literally, last night, I'm walking the dog. He calls me up. He said, when were you diagnosed as a dyslexic? I said, I told him this story, sweet spot of diagnosis, 3rd grade, when people kind of figure out that you can't read. I had a 5th grade sister, a 1st grade brother. They were in the learning, advanced studies program, and I was not. And my mother's like, why? Because she's a Jewish mother. That's what she does. Why are these two in the gifted program and my son David is not? And the principal said, you have a son, David? Now, it's one thing to not put me in the gifted program. It's another thing to not know who I am. That is completely bullshit. But anyway, I have another one. All right, we'll test this one. Talk to the teacher, and the teacher's like, it's kind of smart, but he's also kind of broken. So they test me, and they basically come to that conclusion, kind of smart, kind of broken. And so I said, that was it. And he's like, well, then what happened? Nothing. This was like whenever in the 70s or something. What happened was my mother read to me. It turns out that's what happened. And it was the beginning of what I learned to be my truth, which is smart people do not read. Smart people get others to read to them. That is what entrepreneurship is about. Do you know how I read at the age of 3? I made my little brother in 1st grade read to me. That's how I read. I said, hey, Josh, you know how to read this and I don't, so read it. To which he did, which was very convenient. So now I'm a venture capitalist. I may get to entrepreneurship. I may never get to entrepreneurship. That's how I have 33 more minutes of me, maybe 30 minutes of me, 3 of entrepreneurship. All right. So before I get to entrepreneurship, I'll tell you about what a venture capitalist does, because it's the perfect job for me. In fact, when I became a VC, I'd been an attorney. My mother was happy about this. She felt good about it. It was not as good as being a doctor, but it was good. It was somewhat less good when I no longer chose to be a public defender, as I had stated on my application, and became a corporate attorney, selling out the family name. But I was still an attorney, so she could still say, well, my son, the attorney. And then I left being an attorney to be a venture capitalist. This was a terrible day in the Hornik house. And my mother said, what is a venture capitalist? And I explained to her what a venture capitalist was. And as sad as she was about the fact that I was no longer an attorney, she said, so you talked your way into a job that only involves talking? To which I said, yes. And to which she said, that is perfect for you. That is venture capital. You know what else venture capital is? It's not reading, it's listening. So I did some math just to give you a sense of what my life is like. So this is hard math. I actually, in order to make it not terribly hard math, I rounded up. I've been at VC for 19 years, but 19 is harder than doing it as 20. So here's what my life is. In any given year, and this is essentially true, actually, I will get about 1,000 people email me about a business. So 1,000 business plans of some sort will come in, and I will have to make the decision whether or not to meet with them. This part often involves reading. But the good news is that I have a cheat. The cheat is that I judge it not by what it says, but from whom it came. It turns out that if Steve Boom emails me and says, this person is smart, I know that this person is smart, and I will meet with her. If Stu tells me to meet with someone, I will meet with them. And therefore, I don't have to read that much. I just have to read the from line and then the first sentence, which says and by the way, one of the skills a venture capitalist learns is to translate that first sentence. So here I'll give you two of them. David, you need to meet this person. She worked with me and was amazing. I would work for her in a second. Meeting. Here's the other line. David, let me introduce you to someone great. No meeting. One was a recommendation, the other was an obligation due to a familial relationship with her cousin. I promise you. All right, so 1,000 in my inbox. I get to some who've been recommended by Stu and Steve. I take those meetings. Now I have to figure out the rest. Some fraction of those say, dear sir, and I say no. That's easy. Some fraction have the good sense to send me a video link. This is an increasing thing that's happening, and it's not a strategy unless people see this talk, and now it will be a strategy, and they'll say, rather than send you this, here's a link, bless them, I will watch their video. And I watch the videos because guess what? That's easier. Then, God help me, you actually just write words, then I have to read some of them and decide whether or not to meet with you. I take those 1,000, and I meet with 100 of them over the course of the year. Now the fun starts. Those 100 people present to me for an hour. They tell me what they're doing, I ask questions, I get to interact, they all care deeply about what it is they're doing, so they are experts in these things. I get 100 hours of expert lectures. Of those 100 people, I think, these 10 are maybe building some interesting business that I'm excited about. Those 10 I meet for 10 more hours. And for 10 more hours, those people instruct me and educate me, and I get excited enough and I fund one of them. That is what I do in a year. 1,000 to 100 to 10 to 1. Then what happens? Then I give you money and I sit on your board. What happens when I sit on your board? I go to board meetings. What are board meetings? Thankfully, there's always a pre-read. I have one entrepreneur. Is this it is being recorded? I have told him. This guy, Sam Yagan, was a student of mine. I teach at Stanford Business School, and I taught this intellectual property class many years ago. And Sam would sit in the back and roll his eyes at me. In one class, I literally said to Sam, you roll your eyes at me more than my children. And Sam rolled his eyes at me. But man, is he smart. He's just the smartest character. And it took me 15 years, and after 15 years, I finally got to fund him. And I now work with Sam, and Sam is amazing, with one exception. the fucking pre-read. He writes more words in a week than all of my other entrepreneurs combined. Ugh. The rest say, David, we love you. And we're just going to present to you what we're doing over this board meeting, which will last for, call it 3 hours. They'll talk about what's happening. They'll talk about the market. They'll talk about the competition. So for 3 hours, and let's call it a quarter, although actually in the early days it's like for once a month. So 3 hours a month to 3 hours a quarter. The thing I was most excited and interested in, I get to hear about in detail from someone speaking to me. That is an amazing job. So what does that add up to? Here is your answer. I gave myself 2 minutes an executive summary. That's 2,000 minutes of executive summaries, 2,000 hours of initial meetings, 2,000 hours of secondary meetings. That's 6,000 hours of lecture of like really smart people telling you what they're doing in order to finally invest in some people. Then I invest in them, and over the last 20 years, I've spent 12 hours of board meetings a year times 10 years is times 20 companies, or another 2,400 hours. So 8,400 hours-ish of the smartest people in the world telling me interesting and important things. That is amazing. That is an incredible gift. And by the way, that is what dyslexics do. Dyslexics filter. We are filters. We are not sitting there and getting an accurate record of every word written. We are taking as many sources as we can consume, ideally not in writing, and we are filtering them down and gathering information and making choices. And so smart people may read, but really smart people do. Really smart people think, and then really smart people do. And that's what entrepreneurship is about. So, so back to this topic, the topic of entrepreneurship. How does that apply then to people who are actual entrepreneurs, right? How do entrepreneurs do this if it's not their job to hear everybody on the planet telling them what's going on? Well, it turns out that, in fact, that is their job. It isn't their job necessarily to read everything that's written on the planet. It's to gather information. And great entrepreneurs do a set of things that are about filtering and about aggregating. So what I have seen, what I have seen is that entrepreneurs, truly great entrepreneurs, are sponges, information sponges, and then they have the capacity to determine from context the things that are meaningful, right? That's what I spend my whole year doing. It's not that every one of those conversations is meaningful. It's only meaningful in the context of this is not a thing I'll do, right? Not it, not it, not it, not it, maybe, not it, maybe, right? That's my life. Well, that's the life of an entrepreneur. Just like everybody else, non-entrepreneurs are busy. They're gathering information. They're trying to gather every bit of information. They're being very specific and factual and detailed, etc. And dyslexic entrepreneurs are gathering whatever information they can in context and then making choices. And that ability is the thing that I think distinguishes dyslexics from non-dyslexics. Can non-dyslexics do it? Sure. Have I backed non-dyslexic entrepreneurs? Yeah, sure. I've backed maybe a couple, like Sam Yagan. Are they fine entrepreneurs? Sure, they're fine entrepreneurs. But what is the thing that I have seen in dyslexics that we see disproportionately represented in companies, in startups? It's this creativity, it's this ability to understand and aggregate and filter and put in context and make new choices, right? That is a skill that you cannot teach. And that is not a skill that comes out of reading every word. That is a skill that comes out of gathering words and figuring out what is missing. And so entrepreneurs are really good at that, and dyslexic entrepreneurs are the best at it, right? What else do entrepreneurs need to do? And Stu knows this better than anyone. Entrepreneurs are great sellers. Turns out, what do you need to be a good seller? Do you need to have read a bunch of books? I mean, oh, I got to learn about selling. I better read a bunch of books. I know that that's what people do. They do, like, oh, traits of a great seller or whatever. No, that's going to go terribly for you. Like, if that's your path to figuring out how to sell, you are going to sell nothing. Back to me. I was this crazy little kid in high school with an earring and a ponytail who was the cleaning boy at the dress shop across from my friend's great job. I was the guy cleaning up the dust in the bottoms of the racks, and every so often, to the misfortune of young girls buying intimate apparel, I would be at the register. At which point, the moms would look and go, "What? Why are we shopping here?" And then in between, I'd go across the way to my friend Lance, who was at Tom McCann's shoe store. That was how many people remember Tom McCann? What a great institution, only the finest shoes. I grew up in New Hampshire. Let me assure you that at this particular time, being a ponytailed, earringed, dyslexic Jew who was 5'4", not big on the list of hires in the Tom McCann in New Hampshire. My friend Lance, who was none of those things, literally, he got hired because his name was Lance. Who else are you going to hire? And it turned out Lance was pretty good, and he sold a bunch of shoes. And then in my breaks, I'd go across to Tom McCann. I'd hang out with Lance. And Phil, who was the manager of the Tom McCann, would be like, there's that Hornik. Would never be David. That's right, Hornik. There's that Hornik. But one day, the miraculous happened. It was snowstorms, and they were short-handed, and they needed to sell a shit ton of boots, and all they had was me. And Lance said, for the 800th time, "Phil, you really should hire David, I promise you." And Phil said, "Okay, we have this run on the boots, we gotta do it. It's on you, Lance Lancio the third," or whatever. Bertrand Roland Lancio, shoe salesman. "It's on you that this little man is going to be selling shoes." And thus began my world domination tour. Because it turns out that selling things is not about being named Lance, it's about sucking up. And I am a tremendous suck up. Because if dyslexics have learned anything, it is that they have to lead with sucking up. We sure as fuck aren't leading with our spelling tests. So you better lead with sucking up, and you better build a good relationship, and you better figure out what your teacher needs, and you better figure out what your teacher wants. Because that's how you're going to succeed. You are not going to succeed by the ordinary measure, which is, go and make this thing. You're going to succeed because you understand the real requirements. So here I am. There's the rules for everyone else, and then there are the rules for dyslexics. And sometimes the rules for everyone else seem to favor the everyone else. And those suck. That feels crappy. And I totally get that. But sometimes, and just maybe that's at Tom McCann's shoe store, the rules for dyslexics favor us over everyone else. And I promise you that was the case, because I knew what people were coming in for. I knew why they would be excited about the matching purse to their purple pumps. I knew when they just wanted to get out there as quickly as possible, and I was an efficient machine. I knew when chatting with them about the already fabulous shoes they were wearing was a good idea. And Lance and I became number 1 and 2 shoe salesmen in Tom McCann's New England empire for months on end as we fought out this epic battle of the dyslexic and the not. I will tell you that I was victorious a number of times, Lance, if you're watching this, you may correct the history, but I promise you, at least a few times, I sold more shoes. And to this day, I'm sure that Phil was like, I don't know what happened. I really don't. But that's the reality. The reality of dyslexia is that we're better at context. We are better at understanding the needs of the moment. We are not worried about the minutia. We are not focused on the details in the weeds. We are worried about what are we trying to achieve, how can we achieve it, who is the impediment, what can we do to get through that impediment? And that is what entrepreneurs do. Great entrepreneurs are great sellers. Do you know what entrepreneurs have to do? All they do is sell. First, they have to convince people that this idea that they've come up with is a good idea. And by the way, it almost assuredly isn't. So that's really hard. Like, turns out the vast majority of these ideas, terrible ideas, they're terrible, and yet, including the ones I fund. And yet they convince people like me to give them millions of dollars. So they have to come up with this idea. Then they have to convince perfectly reasonable human beings to join them in this quest for the unlikely. And that's actually, again, insanity. Like, why would you leave a stable, thoughtful, reasonable job to go join a startup, to be in entrepreneurship, this thing that almost assuredly will fail? And yet it happens every day. And why does it happen every day? Because entrepreneurs are really good at convincing people that there's nothing but promise here, that this is an opportunity and that you could change the world and big picture, right? We're good at big picture. Then you have to convince someone to give you money. Then you have to convince companies to use your thing or consumers to pay you for it. All you do all day is sell, sell, sell. And dyslexic entrepreneurs are the best in the world at it. So that's another thing. What else? I don't remember. Conveniently, I wrote it down 3 seconds ago. The only problem is what page is it on? And then there's leadership. And it's really in some ways, this is an adjunct of selling, right? At the end of the day. I mean, here you are, and you start this thing, and you convince a bunch of people to join you, and then you make some progress, and you raise some money, and you hire some more people, and you hire some more people, and if it's successful, you go from a few people to hundreds and thousands of people. I still think this is magic, by the way. I completely can't believe that this is a thing. I funded 3 gentlemen with this idea back now, I don't know, 15, 16 years ago. And it was an idea that you would take log files and you'd put a search engine on top of it and that would be valuable. And I said, yeah, that sounds great. Here, $4 million. It took a few months, but that was sort of what I said. And this thing turned out to actually be super valuable, and it went from 3 people to 30 people to 300 people to 3,000 people to now more than 5,000 people. It's a company called Splunk, and it's this enterprisey thing. And I, to this day, think it's alchemy. Like, how do you do that? That's amazing. But if that is what's happening, if you are going from a dozen to 120, you can no longer do the things you thought you could do before, right? You can no longer talk to everyone and have a set of relationships and hear what everybody's doing. You have to manage people. You have to manage organizations. You have to scale organizations. You have to influence in ways that are not direct. And again, this is something that dyslexics are great at, right? To my point earlier of what we do is filter, well, finding amazing people to lead your organization, people who you can trust, people who will follow, people who will have skills that aren't yours, et cetera. All of that is something that great entrepreneurs do every day. And I promise you the dyslexic brain is well suited for that. We're well suited for understanding the nature and traits of people who will then be able to lead and the ways in which you can influence how they behave. because you can no longer, it can no longer be command and control. It's influence, it's inspire, it's all these things are very big picture. And so great entrepreneurs are thought leaders in that world, right? They understand and they appreciate how to take the raw material of others and optimize and get them to perform and create greatness, right? So the entrepreneurial world, other than being impossible to spell and speak, is well suited for the dyslexic. It is this path, the same way that venture capital is this ability to consume a huge amount of information, filter it down to output, and move forward. Entrepreneurs have that same path, same thing before them. So, and the last thing I'm going to say, and I unbelievably have not used all my time, a very rare moment, I should have talked more about myself. And that was with my 17-minute Tom McCann rant. Who knew? So here's what entrepreneurs need not be great at. They don't have to be great readers, it turns out. We all know that. We all know amazing people who that is not only not their strong suit, it may not be their suit. You don't need to be an amazing person at math. You know what's amazing about being in a position where you can hire people? Is you hire people. I hired my little brother to read for me when I was 5. When you're in a position to be an entrepreneur, hire amazing people. They're the people who will do the math for you. They will be the people who can do the reading for you. They'll be the people who can do the writing for you, right? Entrepreneurship is not about these terrible, constrained ways of viewing intelligence or excellence or expertise. Entrepreneurship is about action, it's about doing, not saying, and it's about success. And I would put to you that the very best people in that world, if they are not dyslexic, they certainly could be dyslexic, and it is the land of the dyslexic. It's theirs to take, it's theirs to succeed in, and I'm grateful to have that gift, but also to back others who do as well. There you have it. So,
Was that right? Thank you, David.
at least profane.
Yeah, there was only one F-bomb this time. I'll never forget the look of my general manager when you, at the Microsoft campus, when you dropped the F-bomb 3 times.
Oh, you know. Oh, one more thing, actually. And this is, I think, you didn't want to move on. There are 9 minutes more of talking about me.
Yeah, or you didn't tell the spelling story, but you...
The spelling story, I don't even remember. No, but it is, but the swearing thing is sort of reminds me, because I have these conversations with my kids, but where people they judge you based on a set of characteristics or criteria or whatever. So swearers are dumb, coarse people. Fuck that. We all know. But the first thing I do whenever I teach, so I teach at both Stanford and Harvard, which my mother thought was ironic, is that I say to my students, just because it's misspelled doesn't mean it's wrong. And they kind of go, they think about it, because that's not what you're taught, right? You're taught if it's misspelled, it's probably wrong. If it's accompanied by a swear word, it's probably wrong. And the reality is that that's just not true. It turns out that those are not criteria for excellence. Thank goodness.
Yep.